Hi everyone, my name's Nicola Frith, and I'd just like to begin by thanking Brother Kabina and everyone in PRALER for inviting me to contribute to this GIPRAD event, or the Ghana in Internationalist Planet Repairs Action Dialogue. So I'm here representing the INOSAAR, which stands for the International Network of Scholars and Activists for African Reparations. So we're a consultancy and advocacy group dedicated to advancing the struggle for reparations and other forms of transitional justice for the enslavement and genocide of peoples of African descent. And over the past 5 years, our work has been contributing to the grassroots International Social Movement for African Reparations, or the ISMAR, to which we hold ourselves accountable. I'd like to also begin by acknowledging that my words are based on the learnings that I have acquired by working alongside reparations activists, both within the INOSAAR and within the ISMAR, as well as through studying African-centred and Indigenous and decolonial scholarship and teaching about the history and legacies of slavery and colonialism. My words are also drawn from my practical experiences of trying to achieve reparatory justice through the INOSAAR, and more recently through my work as co-chair of a review into the legacies of slavery and colonialism within my own institution, the University of Edinburgh. So the heart of the discussions that we're having here today are three main concerns as I see them, and as they relate to the title of this discussion, which is the APPGAR and the relevance of PRALER among the steps of dialogue towards an APPCITARJ hearing of the worldwide Maangamizi experiences of African people and their allies. So obviously I'm speaking here from the perspective of being a movement ally or a co-conspirator. So the first concern is about the need to bring together human and planetary reparations. The second is about the ethics on which to base any dialogue or educational initiatives seeking to develop our shared understandings of what reparations are and what they mean. And the third is about how to transform any discussions or learning into something meaningful that can positively affect reparatory change in the world, for example, by contributing to existing mechanisms such as the all-party parliamentary group on African reparations, that is preparing the way for an APPCITARJ, or the All-Party Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry into Truth and Reparatory Justice. So we know that African enslavement and other forms of colonial oppression hold the legal status of being crimes against humanity. And we know that the effects of these crimes can still be seen in systemic forms of racism today. And we also know that crimes against humanity invoke the need for reparatory justice. But what is less recognised is how these crimes are connected to the climate emergency that we're facing today, and therefore require a more holistic or joined up response. The climate emergency today has its roots in Europe's transoceanic trafficking and enslavement of African peoples and subsequent growth and industrialisation. Ecocide and genocide both stem from the same systemic problem, that is the envisaging of humans, particularly those racialised as Black, and our Mother Earth as resources to be exploited in the quest for monetary profit and the acquisition of global power. As such, we cannot understand the crises that we're facing in our world today unless we also understand those interconnections between, and I'm quoting here from Lydia Naspil, the long history of colonial and neo-colonial plunder of the resources and wealth of the South, including its people. The world that we inhabit today is living unevenly with the consequences of the twin crimes of genocide and ecocide that continue to produce interconnected forms of racial and climate injustice. Our world is like a broken vase, and it needs to be rebuilt from the bottom up, not the top down. It needs to be reconstructed with great care, piecing together all of its crucial parts so that it makes sense for all of us, so that we can rebuild it anew, and in doing so, reconstruct our sense of who we are and where we're going. This is a process that does not seek to divide or make simple what is complex, but to mend and repair piece by piece. This is what is at stake, and it matters to all of us. It matters to everyone because we're all living living with the consequences. This is what is referred to as the Maangamizi. Reparations are not just orientated towards or concerned by the crimes of the past. They are about addressing the present-day continuum of harms that join the dots between chattel enslavement, colonialism and neocolonialism, including the devastating effects that exploitation has had on our planet. The call to stop the Maangamizi is therefore one that seeks to recognise the origins of those crimes, link them to contemporary manifestations and find solutions to stopping the harm. So I use the word unevenly because these harmful consequences affect some far more than others. We can crudely divide this between the global north and the global south. We can say, to return to the metaphor of the vase, that the top smashed the bottom. The climate crisis or emergency that we're living through makes these disparities abundantly clear. And yet the demands of those who are oppressed have rarely been taken seriously, particularly by Western governments. Voices from the global south are not being sufficiently heard in the environmentalist movement, creating what Malcolm describes as a double divide. First, by separating current environmental concerns from the histories of enslavement and colonialism, and second, by ignoring and devalorizing the experiences, knowledges, and voices of those who are being most adversely affected. Instead, to quote Malcolm, we must think about social justice, the fight against racism, and the preservation of ecosystems together. This is what is meant by planet repairs, or the need to proceed from a standpoint of pluriversality and cognitive justice. So put simply, this means understanding that there is more than one way to view the world, more than one system of knowledge, and therefore that there is more than one way to repair it. It also means that we urgently need alternative ideas and ways of thinking and being in order to face the challenges that lie ahead. And that to value and follow different approaches, rooted, for example, in African and other indigenous ways of thinking and being, is an act of reparatory justice. A pluriversal, as opposed to a universal approach, necessarily widens the possibilities of how we might begin to repair, while recentering the voices and knowledges of those who have been engaged in their own processes of self-reparation for centuries. We have much to learn. This pluriversal approach represents the ethics on which to base any dialogue or educational initiatives seeking to develop shared understandings on reparations. In the INOSAAR, we've been developing what we call our principles of participation that seek to promote equity between the knowledges produced by African heritage communities on reparations and all other stakeholders, to quote Esther Stanford-Corsaigne. So these kinds of principles can be used and adapted in other contexts, as we're doing in my own institution at the moment. And they might also be usefully embedded into the all-party parliamentary group for African reparations in order to help encourage and open up discussions around difficult topics. For the INOSAAR, one of our most critical starting points has been to address the power imbalances inherent in what Chowdhury has called the tendency of professionalized experts or university-based intellectuals to ignore, render invisible, or overwrite the voices, ideas, and indeed theories produced by those engaged in social struggles. So understanding and recognizing how these power imbalances work and play out in group dynamics and finding ways to overcome them would allow for the creation of a space in which there can be real knowledge exchange and discussion between participants. So the principles are there to ensure that dialogue is conducted in a way that reflects the desired goals. And these include to repair relations, to rebuild trust, to address misunderstandings, to widen perceptions, to build a shared knowledge base, to become open to new ways of thinking and being, to listen actively, and to engage in reparatory and cognitive justice. It is on this basis then that our learning in dialogue with each other and across different social movements, including those dedicated to both racial and climate and justice, can be transformed into something meaningful that can positively affect reparatory change in the world. Spaces such as those being opened up by INOSAAR, PRALER, and GIPRAD can both contribute to the work of the APPGAR while also preparing the path for a much-needed APPCITARJ. This process is not just about testifying to the existence of the Maangamizi and calling for an end to climate and racial injustice, but about finding African-centred and other indigenous solutions to repairing the legacies of slavery and colonialism. In this way, we can not only challenge misunderstandings about reparations, but also learn the value of different approaches, ways of thinking, being and repairing, and learn to become reparationists engaged in a shared endeavour to mend our world. Thank you very much for your time.